that there are really two big types of risks that come from unabated climate change, or climate change generally. One of those is physical risk from climate change itself. So the extreme heat, the sea level rise, the storm surges, the wildfires out here, the ocean acidification, the risks that those things bring to your companies, your supply chains, and your operations. The other is really this thing that they call, TCFD calls transition risk, the risk of not adjusting to an energy transition, not adjusting to policy and regulatory changes that are happening not only here in the state, at the state level particularly, but all around us.
Hank Paulson and I were at dinner, Kate was there and so forth, discussing all of this, and the climate scientists and the economists were there, and they were talking about the base case. And the base case, if you read the Risky Business Project, is a very serious case, both by sector and by geography. But Hank and I had the same reaction, which was the tail risks, the hopefully low probabilities, though I don't think they're not low, I think they're probably pretty substantial probabilities, of mega events, ultra events, catastrophic events, were much higher than climate scientists were focused on. And so I came away with the feeling that not only did everything I just say pertain to an investor, but that there were very serious tail risks. And as all of you know, if you've been involved in investment, dealing with tail risks is a very complicated matter. But it seemed to me that it was one that you imperatively had to face if you were going to be an investor in a world in which climate change was a reality.
And I would say we're in the early stages of the transition to a low-carbon economy. For businesses, I think the risk is how fast is that going to happen? And I come at this with a perspective of risk management where time is a scarce resource. If we have enough time, we can solve this problem. There's no question about that. But we don't control the amount of time we have. We don't really know that the Earth's atmosphere is a reservoir. We're filling it up, and we really don't know what the capacity is, and we don't know what the worst case scenario is if we go too far. So what that means is ultimately businesses, governments, civil society is going to have to move quickly to be prepared for that potential worst case scenario.
No, I think what I would say is climate change is a reality. Climate change could profoundly affect what's going to happen to your company. And what I'd like to know is what do you think the effects could be? That's what you call the physical risks,
Yep.
You know, whether it be supply chains or the flooding of coastal waters, whatever it might be. What you call the transition risk, that is to say, what kinds of regulations do we think or pricing might happen that could affect you? Whatever else might happen as we go along, that could new technologies or whatever. And then adaptation. I think most companies are probably going to have to engage in major adaptation. What are the costs of that going to be? And then finally, if we do get to the point, which I think we will, so I'm not particularly optimistic the world's going to deal with its problem. If we do get to the point that we have crises, how is that going to affect your company?
And it's very clear what the policy has to be. We have to create appropriate incentives globally to reduce emissions. I'm on the board of something called the Climate Leadership Council, which is a Republican-led effort to price carbon emissions in the United States. We have working with us all of the major, a lot of major companies, including Exxon, Total, Shell, BP, as well as Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, and others. And this is a conservative approach. We're trying to get Republican support. I think we will get a carbon tax, a significant carbon tax in the U.S. And when you ask, has the response been fast enough? Economic agents respond to incentives. We have not had the appropriate incentives. As soon as we get those incentives in place, as an economist, I am very optimistic that companies around the world, as well as consumers, entrepreneurs, investors, will immediately start making appropriate decisions based on those economic incentives. And we will move very quickly to a low carbon economy. So I think you all have to be ready for that.